Has this ever happened to you? Right after an intimate moment with a man, the deep connection you felt seems to dissolve into a cold, almost painful silence. A moment that had been overflowing with tenderness and promise filled with glances that spoke more than words ever could suddenly turns into an inexplicable distance. That invisible emptiness appears just when you thought everything had been sealed by something rare and powerful. Your heart races, your mind fills with questions, and a quiet fear begins to echo in your chest. It's as if, in those few magical seconds that felt like eternity, something inside him simply vanished, and you're left wondering what just happened, what changed. Why did the warmth turn to cold without warning? In the midst of that silence, the questions begin to gnaw at you from within. Was I enough? Did he truly want me? Is he rejecting me? Am I no longer the woman who drew him close just moments ago? I want to guide you beyond this confusion, because there's a truth few people ever tell you, a raw, real, and transformative truth that can forever change how you experience intimacy, how you see yourself, and how you build a connection that not only lasts, but deepens, becoming an unbreakable magnetic bond between you and the man you love. This truth will help you understand what he feels and thinks in those quiet seconds that seem like an abyss. But more importantly, it will reveal your immense power as a woman, the power to transform that empty silence into fertile ground, where the deepest and most sacred bond between two people can take root. This isn't just about biology or cliches about men. We are entering a realm few women truly understand, the invisible play of energies, emotions, and inner shadows that unfold in that precise moment, and how your presence, your energy, and your way of being can turn that void into a bridge to spiritual connection, to devotion, to a love that runs deeper than words. If you are ready to leave confusion and fear behind, to reclaim your feminine essence in every intimate moment, then stay with me. Because what you discover today will not only help you understand him better, but will shape you into the kind of woman no man could ever forget. Let me tell you the story of Laura. She was 45, emerging from the shadows of a painful divorce. After a long journey of healing, her heart was finally ready to open again. And that's when she met Diego, 47, warm, attentive, a man who seemed to promise a new beginning. For weeks, their messages were a delicate weave of hope and desire. Their glances burned softly, rekindling Laura's faith in love. Everything pointed to this encounter being sacred, a new chance not only for a relationship, but for her own sense of worth. Then came the long-awaited night when their bodies finally met. For Laura, every touch felt like a prayer, every kiss, a silent promise, a wordless language of genuine surrender. She felt alive again, fulfilled, connected in a way she hadn't felt in years. But just as everything reached its peak, when she believed the bond between them was unbreakable, Diego suddenly turned away, stared at the ceiling, and fell into silence. A cold shiver ran through her. Doubt crashed over her like a dark wave. Was it just sex for him? Was I not enough? Is he already pulling away? That kind of silence often hurts more than open rejection because it's invisible, silent, and deceptive. What Laura didn't know, and what I want to tell you today, is that his silence was not a sign of rejection or a lack of feeling. On the contrary, it was part of a much deeper process unfolding within him, a biological and energetic rhythm that few truly understand. Right after climax, a man's body releases a hormone called prolactin, a chemical that brings a deep sense of exhaustion and an instinctive need to withdraw. It's as if his entire being is saying, I need to recover. But it doesn't stop there. His mind retreats too, as though someone has pressed a reset button. For a brief time, the areas of his brain responsible for emotional connection quiet down, and he slips into a state of internal stillness. This isn't a choice, not a decision to pull away or to ignore you. It's simply how his body and energy move through that sacred cycle of connection and release. It's an automatic response, deeply rooted in his biology and in the way he experiences the world. Yet, on an energetic level, something just as powerful is taking place. The masculine energy, which expands outward during intimacy, naturally draws back into its center afterward. It is an archetypal rhythm of life itself. After opening and surrendering, he must return to himself to regain inner balance like an overflowing river, finding its way back to its riverbed. This is why the moment of silence after intimacy is not the end of connection, but rather a vital part of the masculine cycle. When you understand this, it frees you from the weight of doubt and fear. You are not the cause of the silence. You are not less worthy or less desired. In that instant, his energy simply returns to its source, and what you do with that space determines whether your connection deepens or fades. Here lies the key one that few women know, yet one that can completely transform this tender, vulnerable moment. The emptiness, the silence that feels like an abyss, is not what defines the experience. What truly shapes the future of your connection is how you choose to respond to that invisible space. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of that silence, a silence that feels almost like a scream. Your first impulse might be to ask questions, to reach out, to fill the void with words. Are you okay? Do you love me? Why are you so quiet? These questions are born from fear, from the aching need to reconnect, but beneath them vibrates a frequency of pressure and lack. In that moment, your energy doesn't speak of trust or confidence. It trembles with uncertainty. And though he may not consciously understand it, his subconscious feels it as an invisible tension, a pull that threatens his sense of space and freedom. When feminine energy turns to neediness, the man who is instinctively trying to restore his inner equilibrium feels cornered. He senses that his space is shrinking, that he is being held onto too tightly. His instinctive reaction is retreat, a subtle defense to protect his autonomy and balance. It's as if the door of his silence closes, and every attempt to force it open only seals it tighter. But what if you begin to see his silence not as a wall, but as a gate? A sacred gate filled with mystery, power, and deep calm. If you learn to remain present in serenity without falling into fear or urgency, something extraordinary happens. When you stop trying to fill the silence with words and instead fill it with your calm, grounded, feminine presence, you become an invisible, magnetic sanctuary. This is a space that cannot be seen with the eyes, but felt by the soul, the presence of a woman who radiates peace, who is rooted in her own completeness, whose energy whispers safety and quiet strength. She does not depend on his words or his reassurance. Her energy speaks a language beyond sound, steady, radiant, unshaken by uncertainty, patient without passivity. And it is in that stillness that true alchemy unfolds. Because no man ever forgets or replaces the woman who offers him that sacred space after intimacy. The woman who doesn't panic in his silence, who doesn't chase his gaze or his answers, but remains open, luminous, and connected to her own power. This conscious waiting is not submission. It is a subtle, sacred dance, an invitation for him to return not out of guilt or obligation, but by choice. It becomes a magnetic current that draws not only his body, but also his soul, a frequency that calls his heart back to you, again and again, until he feels that within you, he has found a home he never wants to leave. That is why the power lies within you, in how you meet that emptiness. That silence can be either danger or gift, depending on the energy you bring to it. You hold the ability to transform a moment of apparent separation into the foundation of a deep, lasting, and authentic connection. And that, ultimately, is the difference between a relationship that breaks and one that deepens until it becomes unbreakable. Let me tell the story of Patricia, a 51-year-old woman who lived what many would call a stable, successful marriage. With Hector, her husband of more than 20 years, she had built a life that, from the outside, seemed perfect. 2 grown children, a beautiful home, mutual respect, and a routine that kept their world in motion. But behind that facade of stability, Patricia carried a quiet yet heavy burden, a deep emotional disconnection that became especially painful after every intimate encounter with Hector. During those moments of passion, Hector seemed completely present. His touch was firm, his gaze intense, his desire unmistakable. In those fleeting hours, Patricia felt desired, loved, alive. But as soon as the passion ebbed, everything changed. He would turn to his side, close his eyes, and slip into a silence that rose like a cold wall between them. Sometimes he would fall asleep immediately, as if vanishing into another world, leaving her alone in the darkness. And there, in that stillness, Patricia felt her soul turn to ice before the weight of an emptiness she could neither name nor escape. That silence did not only remove Hector's body from her, it took something far deeper, the sense of connection to the man she loved. At first, she could not understand what was happening. Painful thoughts consumed her. He doesn't love me anymore. I'm not enough. What did I do wrong? These questions became an inner storm that tore at her peace until, guided by life's quiet hand, Patricia found her way into therapy, a journey that revealed to her a deeper, liberating truth. Through that process, she came to see that his silence was not rejection, nor absence of love, but rather the outward face of something Jung once called the male shadow, the inner struggle between the vulnerability awakened by intimacy and the instinctive need to regain control, to return to one's center. After the act of surrender that love-making demands, Hector did not know how to remain in that open, exposed space. His ego, threatened by such vulnerability, responded by closing down, retreating to recover its balance. What changed everything for Patricia was the realization that this space was not meant to be filled with questions, accusations, or desperate attempts to pull him back. Instead, it was an invitation to remain centered, to rest in her own peace, and to offer him a place of refuge grounded in calm acceptance. So, rather than filling the silence with anxious words, she filled it with her serenity, without fear, without need. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, something shifted, as if this new atmosphere of quiet respect and freedom dissolved an invisible barrier. Hector began to return to her of his own accord, not out of duty or habit, but out of genuine longing. His gestures of affection became softer, freer. His presence grew warmer, more authentic. Their love no longer felt like something they were holding together through effort, but something that flowed naturally, chosen consciously, nurtured in silence, and rooted in deep mutual respect for each other's inner rhythm. Patricia's story shows us that behind the silence which so often wounds lies a process that deserves to be honored and understood. The very space that seems to separate us can become the threshold of a deeper, truer connection, if we meet it with presence, trust, and self-love. And yet, this is precisely where many women, like Anna, make a painful mistake, one that quietly erodes the delicate bond forming between two souls. Anna, 53, had been married to Leonardo for nearly 3 decades. On the surface, their physical connection seemed solid. Leonardo desired her, touched her tenderly, and appeared fully engaged in their lovemaking. But the moment the passion subsided, he would turn away, fall silent, or rise from the bed without a word. For Anna, that silence cut like a blade. In an effort to hold on to the closeness, she tried to bridge the emptiness with urgent embraces, trembling hands, and questions born of insecurity. Are you okay? Did you love me? Did you feel me? She was, in truth, searching for reassurance, a desperate attempt to soothe the ancient fear of being left alone. But instead of building a bridge, her urgency had the opposite effect. It created a sense of pressure of suffocation, as if Leonardo were being pulled into a net he could neither control nor escape. What Anna and so many women never realize is that this impulse to fill the silence with words and gestures does not draw a man closer. It tears apart the invisible, delicate bond that was just beginning to take shape. Because behind the man's silence after intimacy lies a biological, psychological, and energetic process, one that must never be disrupted or rushed. Carl Jung expressed it with striking clarity. After opening fully, masculine energy must return to its center. It is an instinctive withdrawal, a return to self, a movement toward balance and renewal. To interrupt this process with emotional demands, urgent questions, or visible neediness is to sever the very thread of connection that was just created. That bond born from surrender is not strengthened through pursuit, but through honoring space. In those moments, when a man feels his freedom slipping away, his energy bound, his survival instinct awakens. An invisible wall rises within him, not out of rejection or coldness, but as a way to protect his equilibrium. His masculine nature requires distance to realign, so that he may return to love freely, not from guilt or pressure, but from choice. This is a truth that many relationships overlook, and that countless women unknowingly pay for through the ache of separation, the sting of rejection, or the exhausting struggle to keep alive a connection that quietly fades. But here lies the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. When you understand this rhythm, when you remain rooted in your own power, rather than stepping into that space with fear or lack, you become the woman who not only honors his silence, but transforms it into an invisible bridge of love and attraction. True feminine power does not lie in the words you say or the hurried actions you take after the act, but in the stillness you embody when everything grows quiet. In those sacred minutes, your breath becomes your greatest ally, the key to anchoring your energy and transforming silence into connection. Breathe deeply, not just with your lungs, but with your entire being. Feel each inhale and exhale as a wave that ties you to your center, to that quiet, radiant place within where your calmest and most powerful essence resides. It is a strength that demands nothing, seeks no control, but accepts, holds, and trusts. As you breathe, allow a soft, almost invisible smile to rise. A smile not meant for him, but for yourself. A quiet acknowledgement of your own wholeness. This smile is not merely an expression of joy. It carries the vibration of a woman who knows her worth, who does not need to be completed, who radiates peace and self-assurance from her purest essence. This feminine energy, subtle yet irresistible, becomes an invisible magnet that touches his soul and awakens within him a genuine longing, the desire to return to that space of serenity and mystery that only you can offer. And if you touch him in that moment, let it be with the gentleness of a woman who seeks nothing, the touch of someone who simply wishes to convey peace. Lay your hand softly upon his chest or arm without pressure, without expectation. That brief, non-demanding gesture is a silent message. I am here grounded in my power, free of need, free of urgency, at peace with you and with myself. In that calm vibration, your presence becomes a sacred temple, a sanctuary his soul will long to return to again and again. Because beyond the physical, what a man truly seeks is that profound sense of peace and acceptance, something only a woman can offer when she stands firmly in her own center. Remember, it's not about doing something to keep him close. It's about being the magnetic presence that, through silence and serenity, creates an invisible yet unbreakable bond. A connection deeper than words, stronger than time. Daniela didn't discover this truth from a book or seminar, but in the sacred stillness of an ordinary night. She had lived a long story with Hugo, her husband of 10 years, a story that, from the outside, resembled love, yet left invisible marks upon her soul. Their intimacy was passionate, full of desire, but it always ended the same way. Hugo would turn away, close his eyes, and fall into a silence that to Daniela felt like an abyss. She would lie there, staring at the ceiling, tears glistening in her eyes, a tightness in her chest she couldn't name. It wasn't physical pain, nor absence of love, it was something deeper. It was the haunting feeling of giving everything, yet never quite reaching his soul. Something within Daniela had always broken at the very moment she longed most for connection, until one day, during a workshop on feminine energy and conscious relationships, Something inside her finally clicked. She understood. She didn't have to disturb the silence. She didn't have to fight the emptiness. She didn't have to beg with her eyes or reach with her words. She realized her true power lay not in effort, but in vibration, in the quiet frequency she radiated simply by being. That evening, after an intimate encounter much like the many before it, she felt Hugo begin to drift inward, retreating into his private world. But this time, she didn't cling. She didn't wrap her arms around him out of fear. She didn't ask if he had loved her. Instead, she turned softly toward herself. Closing her eyes, she brought her awareness to her lower belly, feeling her energy gather and return to her like a warm, gentle tide. Within that stillness, she whispered silently, with a calm she had never known before. I am enough. My energy is a gift. I choose to share it, not to beg for it. In that instant, something within Daniela shifted. She was no longer searching or reaching outward. She was simply at peace, anchored in her own worth, whole within her surrender. Her body demanded nothing. Her soul yearned for nothing. She radiated a quiet, luminous stillness like a woman who had finally come home to herself. And then the unexpected happened. Minutes later, without a word, Hugo turned toward her. He drew close from behind, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his forehead against her neck. His voice trembled as he whispered, "You are my peace, and I don't know why I've never told you that before." That moment was no coincidence. It was the energetic response to a new vibration. Daniela hadn't said a word, she hadn't pleaded, explained, or cried. She had simply embodied her power, the power that arises when a woman realizes she doesn't need to do anything to be loved. She only needs to be. Because sometimes it isn't what you do that transforms a relationship, it's what you carry within when the other person pulls away. Eventually, Juliana, after many years of marriage, discovered a truth that transformed not only her relationship, but her entire experience of womanhood. For years, she had believed that love was built through devotion, through presence, through giving, through the endless offering of herself. And she gave everything, her body, her passion, her tenderness, her honest touch. Yet, after each intimate moment, when her husband, Romero, turned away and drifted into sleep, Juliana was left alone with a pain deeper than rejection, the ache of never quite reaching his soul. It wasn't that he didn't love her, but it felt as though her body was welcomed, while her essence remained unseen, as if, despite all her giving, something vital was missing, something that could make their love eternal. Until one night, worn thin by the repetition of that emptiness, Juliana turned inward. And there, in the quiet center of herself, she understood. The body can give pleasure. It can tremble, ignite, burn. But only conscious energy touches the soul. Only when a woman is deeply present within herself, when she doesn't lose her center in the pursuit of validation or in the fear of being left, only then does her intimacy become something sacred. Then it is no longer sex, no longer routine, no longer surrender tangled with expectation. It becomes presence, a vibration elevated into holiness, a silence that whispers, I am here without fear, without mask, without haste. I am temple. I am threshold. I am vessel. Juliana stopped seeing intimacy as an emotional transaction. She began to experience it as a ritual of divine connection, a moment where her soul and her partners could meet beyond body, beyond desire, beyond time itself. And through that inner transformation, something in Romero shifted as well. One evening, as Juliana met his gaze with serene stillness and touched him with no expectation, he looked at her as if seeing her for the very first time. Deeply moved, he whispered, I don't know what happened tonight, but I felt like I wasn't just with you. I felt as if I touched something greater, as if you were a place I've always longed to return to and never knew how. Juliana needed no more words. In that instant, she knew she had arrived. She was no longer merely his wife, no longer just his lover. She had become his energetic home, the threshold to something sacred, something no other bond could ever reach. Because when a woman elevates intimacy into consciousness, her body ceases to be a lure. It becomes a temple. And that temple, when it vibrates in self-love, becomes irreplaceable. Not because of what it gives, but because of what it awakens in the other. That is why today I invite you to completely transform your understanding of intimacy. Because it is not your beauty that binds him to you. It is not your total surrender, not what you do in bed, nor the tender words you whisper in the dark. All of that may stir his ego, may feed his desire for a fleeting moment, but it is not what leaves an imprint on his soul. What truly connects him to you in the way no other woman ever could is the vibrational quality of your energy. It is what your silence says. It is the peace your presence brings after the fire has passed. It is the soft yet powerful stillness you emanate when you no longer crave affection, but remain rooted in your center, a woman who honors herself. Because in those sacred seconds after intimacy, when he turns away into silence, when his energy retreats and his shadow seeks to regain control, you stand before a choice to enter that space with fear or to inhabit it with inner strength, to seek his reassurance or to become his energetic refuge. And if you choose the latter, if you breathe deeply, offer yourself a quiet smile, rest your hand gently upon your own arm, and stay calm without expectation, without pressure, something begins to happen. His soul senses it. His subconscious receives it. And without knowing why, he starts to associate your energy with home, with peace, with the divine. That is the woman he will never forget. Not because she clings to him, but because she elevates him. That is why I am not merely inviting you to understand intimacy. I am inviting you to consecrate it, to make it sacred, a space where you do not offer your body to be loved, but offer your presence to create a soul connection. Because when the woman learns to love from serenity, from conscious energy, from within her inner temple, she no longer needs to chase, to prove, or to demand anything. She simply is, and that luminous state of being is something no man will ever forget, even if he tried. Now, speak these words not merely as a sentence, but as a mantra, a living anchor for your soul. Today I understand masculine silence and awaken to my true power. I do not need to chase anyone because I am presence. I do not need to demand because I am vibration. I am the woman whose soul he will remember forever. Not because of what I give, but because of who I am. Carry these words into every cell of your being. Let them become flesh. Let them become truth. From this moment on, you are no longer the woman who waits to be chosen. You are the woman who chooses herself, the one who vibrates so powerfully in her feminine essence that no man could ever forget her, even if he tried. If this message touched your heart, if something deep within you has awakened, share it with another woman who needs this truth. Leave a like, subscribe, and become part of this circle of conscious souls, ready to love on a higher level. And remember, true power lies not in what you do to hold someone, but in what you radiate when you no longer need to.